This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to welcome everybody to NSA's webinar series number 36 of our NSA Professional Services Series webinars. This one is on leveraging Infor's ION technology. Today's presenter is Rob Thayer. Rob is a consultant with NSA, and he has experience in presenting at TUG. He did an ION session at this most recent virtual TUG, and will be joining us for the TUG coming up in April. Hopefully, knock on wood, that will be a live conference as we all plan. I would ask that we do have a large crowd here, that everybody please ensure that your phones are muted. If you do have questions during the session, I would ask that you please enter them into the chat box. We'll have time at the end of today's presentation to address those. If there are questions we don't get to, we'll make sure we respond to them after the session. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rob. Rob, you're muted.
Sorry about that all. Thank you, Brian, and welcome everybody to today's webinar on leveraging Infor ION technology. I'm Rob Thayer, Senior Technical Consultant with NSA Professional Services, and today I wanted to take some time to talk to you about moving your business to the cloud. Some of you may already be there, some of you may be in the process of moving there, and others might just be contemplating moving there. And so Infor provides these technologies, and you might be wondering, well, what can I do with them? And so today let's talk about some of these technologies and how you can leverage them for your business and once you do get to the cloud. So as you might have guessed, the technology's changed quite a bit since GUI or CHUI, and so Infor has changed as well. And there's a lot of different things that you need to consider when working with these technologies. So we have a lot to cover today. Let's get started, and I'll cover just a few of these technologies. All right, mouse here. So what kind of technologies does Infor offer in the ION world? Well, we have things like data flows, we have workflows, data flows to move your data from one place to another, workflows to add a little bit of logic to that data to make decisions, to decide where that data ends up going. We have XSLT mappings. You can map and transform your data. Infor also offers ION APIs. You can do scripts, you can put scripts in the data flows and your workflows, and they also offer the data lake. Data lake is a way to store your data so that you can access your data outside of CSD or outside of the Infor stack. So today I wanted to talk to you about a few of those, and I wanted to start with data lake. I think data lake is an important part of this technology stack, and it's like I said, it's a way for you to be able to load your data from CSD and access your data in many other ways. So out of the box, Infor provides data lake with your tenant, but it's not just going to work. So there are a few things that you're going to need to do. Either your partner that you're working with is going to help you set this up, or if you're not working with a partner, you're going to want to set this up yourself. And so one of the things that you're going to want to do before getting started is you're going to want to put all the pieces into place. So one of the things you need to do is you need to go into your AO options. You need to enable the replicate to data lake flag. You're going to want to set your audit processing administration to set. You're going to want to use that tool to set audit on all the tables that are available and supported. And of course, you're going to need to set up a data flow to get that data from CSD to the data lake. And so I was going to just cover a few of those here and show you quickly how that can be done. So if we go in to our tenant, this is our tenant, and yours will look similar to this. But basically, you're going to go into your AO system options, and you're going to enable replicate to data lake. And then you're going to go into SAAAU. You're going to add or enable the audit flag on all the tables that you want to send over to CSD. And of course, in order for that data to move there, you need to have a data flow set up. So you're going to set a data flow from CSD to the data lake. And that's going to allow the documents between CSD and the data lake to flow. So once you have that information, or sorry, those things all set up, then once it's set up, you're going to start seeing documents. Anytime you make a transaction in the system, you're going to start seeing documents in your data lake. If you want to go back and get historical data from the database and bring that over into data lake as well, well, you can do that by running the burst extraction tools. Just like running another report, you're going to set a date range, and then you're going to tell it which tables you want to bring into data lake. So that's an important step to start getting your data from CSD into data lake. We absolutely need to set that up. So after you've had that set up and you get data in your data lake, and you start wondering to yourself, well, what am I going to do with all this data? How am I going to extract this data? It's not exactly the same as it used to be, where I could just on premise, I could set up an ODBC and I can do a query and get my results. Things have changed. And so one way you can actually get your data or to see if data is there, the data that you're expecting, is you can use the Compass query tool. And inside of the data lake application, Infor provides this Compass tool. And so you can go ahead and you can write you can select a table and you can write a simple query, and you can get the data results in a grid. Now, of course, with that you can take that data and you can export it to CSV, and you can do whatever you want with it. But you're limited to the amount of data that you can get back from each query in the Compass tool. So how else are you going to get data? What if you want more data? What if you want to do other things with your data? Well, Infor allows you to connect programmatically, if you wanted to the data lake to access your data. You can use programming languages or scripting languages if you want. You can use Python or Java or C#. And Infor provides you with a driver, much like the days of ODBC. Well, in the online world now, you're using a JDBC driver, and you're going to use secure credentials to access the data in your tenant's data lake. So again, you can use programming to do this, or you can use APIs to do this. So again, like I said, you can use APIs. Infor is moving in the new year. They're changing their Compass tool to Data Fabric, so it'll be different endpoints, but it'll be the same idea, is you can access your data programmatically. But you might be saying to yourself, well, what if I don't know how to program? What if I'm not a developer? Well, there are other options out there, and some of those options are to use universal database tools. For example, dbeaver or DB Visualizer, even JetBrains Data Grip. I'm sure if you Googled it, you'd find 100 more. So these are tools that you can use. I like to use dbeaver because it's a free tool, and it allows me to use Infor's JDBC driver to be able to securely connect back to my tenant's data lake, and I can run SQL queries against that data, and I can export that data in many different formats if I want to. So let me just give you a little review of how you would set that up. I'll show you how you can use dbeaver in order to access that data in your data lake. So one of the things that you're going to need once you get into the system, into your Infor OS system, is you're going to need the JDBC driver that Infor provides. So in your ION Desk application, in your app menu, you would come into ION Desk, Configuration, and Downloads. Infor provides you with the JDBC driver that you can use to connect back to your tenant's data lake. So once you're here, you can just go ahead and you can download this. You're going to save it into a folder, and you're going to use it with your dbeaver application or your DB Visualizer application. So once that downloads, you're also going to need to get some credentials to access your tenant. In today's online world, we can never be too secure. So in order to do that, you're going to come into your ION desk application, or sorry, your app menu, pardon me, and then you're going to go into your Infor ION API application. From there, you go into your authorized apps. And in order to build yourself a credential file, what you're going to do is you're going to add a new backend service. So once you select that, you're going to give it a name. And we can call this one DataLake Query, and then you can give it a description. For example, and then you go ahead and you save that. And when you save that, it's going to give you the option to download those credentials. So this is going to download a JSON format file. So you click on download. But before you do that, in this case, in this example, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the password credential grant type. So we're going to create a service account here. Now you can use your own Infor OS user account. It could be rob.thayer@nsa.com or John Smith at abc.com. If you already have an account in Infor OS, you can use that. But if you don't want to use your account, you can create an Infor OS, just kind of like a dummy account or a service account. You don't even have to give it a role, or it doesn't even have to be a valid email address. So I've done just that. I've created an account called Service Account that I'm going to use to help build these credentials. So once I've done that, I'm going to click on Download, and you'll see how it downloads the file here to your Downloads folder or wherever you have it specified in your system to save these download files. You can easily open it up. I like to use Notepad++. You can use any kind of text application that you want, but I use Notepad++. I download the JSON viewer plugin, and I can format. So now it looks a little bit better. And I'll go back to that in a minute and show you the different values that you would need in a different part of this, because it's very important. That file contains everything you need to securely connect to your tenant. So now that we've done that, and we have our JDBC driver, and we have our credentials to be able to connect back to our data lake, why don't we take a look in our dbeaver application and see what we need to do to make a query and get access to the data in our tenant. So this is a free download that you can search on Google. Just so you know, I've put some links in the chat. We have a GitHub repository that I've made a few of our applications, or a few repositories available for you. They're public, and one of them is instructions on how you can set up dbeaver so you can get playing with this and access your data as well. So the instructions are there. If you have any issues, you can always contact me directly, or you can always contact support@nsacom.com. So in this application, I've downloaded, I've installed it. What you need to do, I've already set up the connections here, but basically what you need to do is add a new driver. So in this case, it's already here, the Infor DataLake driver, but you would go ahead and click New, and then you would edit the properties that you need to edit, but I'll just review them with you. So basically, you're going to give your driver a name, you're going to provide the class name, the URL template. In this part here, this is your tenant's name, so you would replace it with your own tenant. And then you go into the libraries, and basically you're just saying you're going to add a file, which you're going to point to your Compass JDBC driver, and then you're going to add the folder, the parent folder. And so that's pretty much it. So you've created a driver that will be used to connect or make a connection back to your database tenant, your data lake, your tenant's database. Anyway, so once you've done that, you're going to have to come in and you're going to create a new connection. And you're just going to specify the driver that you just added and then that's pretty much it. It's going to connect automatically because it's going to have your credentials and it's going to have that information that you populated in the driver setup. Once it's loaded, you're going to see all your tables here. So you're going to say, at this point, now these tables are available for you to start querying, getting data out of. You can easily come into your script pane here and you can write a simple select script or a statement. And you could do, let's say, top 50 star from ARSC. And then you run that. And once that's done running, it'll show you the results in the results pane. And then you have the option at that point to do what you want with that data. So you can export it. So as you can see, these are the results that I got back from my query. You can make more complicated queries if you want. But this is just a simple example to show you that, you know, I can go out from my desktop, connect to my tenant's data lake and get information back from it. So now that I have this information, I can just right click here. There's a bunch of different things you can certainly do with it, but you're probably going to want to export that data. So once you do that, you have the choice. Do I want to put it in CSV format, HTML, JSON? Maybe I want to create SQL import or insert statements that I can import automatically into a database using SQL agent or something. So, or I want to export this data into XML format. So you have a lot of different options when you use these database tools. So I wanted to show you that, and I thought that could be very beneficial for anybody needing access to their data from the data lake. So as I showed you, you can save that data in many different formats, but you're not limited to just exporting data from an application like that. You can do many different things with the data. You can even take the objects that are sent in the data flow from CSD, and you can, instead of put them into data lake, or you could put them into the data lake as well as put them into a folder. You can store those responses into a file, and you can parse that data from the file after using any kind of method that you see fit. You can parse that data. You can do a SQL bulk import, for example, and just load that data directly into a database. So there's many ideas, many options, many things that you can do. Really, it's just using your imagination once you have the tools to do what you need. So data lake is absolutely one way that you can leverage this technology and get your data to do things with your data. But there's also other ways, and another way is ION APIs. This sometimes is a mystery to a lot of people. How can I access my APIs? What am I going to do with my APIs and the data? Like, which ones can I use? And what's necessary to make this work? So I thought it would probably be a good idea if I explained a little bit about how you can use the Infor ION APIs in your tenant. So inside of the Infor suite, we also, as you saw, we have the ION API application that we can go into, and we can create our backend service. But Infor also provides in there, they provide us with a bunch of different applications or API endpoints that we can use. So if we come in here and we go into our available APIs, we see here that Infor is provided. Oh, sorry, someone's talking here. Okay, so once we're in the system, we can, pardon me, I'm going to go back a slide here. Once we're in the ION API system, we see that Infor's provided us with all of these different APIs here, and we can use them. We can use them in a data flow, we can use them in a workflow, we can access them externally if we want to, but maybe there's an API here or there's no APIs here that we really need to use. Maybe we have our own custom API that we want to use. So Infor allows us to do that as well. We can click on Add API, We can search through a list of possible other APIs that we could just plug in and configure right away. And if that doesn't suit our needs, then we can go ahead and we can create a new API. We can have an API listening in an endpoint, could be in Azure, could be in Amazon, it could be on your own on-premise system that you've exposed this API, and you need to access it to do something with the data that's already in CSD, for example, or in IDM, perhaps. So you can go ahead and you can even add your own APIs here. So I think that's pretty neat, and it gives a lot of flexibility. But if we want to use just the standard APIs that Infor has provided, we do have the Infor Distribution SX.e API that we're going to work with in this example. And we're going to work with the actual fetchware API, but Infor does provide a lot of different APIs for you to access as well. You can use the Infor ION API Swagger tool. So the Swagger tool that Infor provides is it's a set of tools using the Infor or the Open API standard. So you can come in and you can test your APIs. You can select it. You can even try it out. So what's nice about it is it gives you everything you really need to build an API request outside of the system. So you're presented, the first thing you come in, you're presented with this Swagger documentation that you can test out, but you're given a payload. So here's your payload that you're going to send as your request off to the endpoint, the listening endpoint. So it's nice that they build this already for you, because you probably wouldn't know how to send a request. The other good thing about this is once you build and test your request, I'm going to go back and I'm going to show a fetchware request just as a pretty easy example. But once you test this out, so in this case, I'm going to put in my company number and I'm going to put in the operator sys. You can put in your own operator initials here. I'm just going to use sys in this case. But here, I'm going to do a request and I'm going to get back all the printers in CSD. So I'm going to choose the table name SASP. I don't need to do any where clause. I don't need to put in the restart row ID. I'm just going to use that information in my request. This is my payload, and I'm going to click execute. And it comes back pretty quick, typically. And everything that you need here, everything you're going to need to make a request is here right now. So basically, it's giving you the response. If you take a look in your responses, in your response from the system, you're going to get a list of all the information, properties, and their keys and their values that you asked for. The other thing you're going to get is you're going to get the endpoint URL that you're going to make your request to. It's also going to show you the header information that you can use to form your request. As well, it's going to give you your bearer token. Now, your bearer token is what you're going to use for future requests until that token expires. That token never stays the same for too long. It's a security thing. And it also shows you your payload here. So everything that you see here is what you need to make an API request. So with that, how can you make an API request externally from not using the Infor Swagger tool? Swagger tool is an internal tool that you can use to practice and build your request. But what are you going to need to build a request to access externally? Well, there's some tools out there, and some of you might be familiar with Postman, some of you might be familiar with Insomnia. Those are other tools that you can use to actually test your APIs, and I recommend that you do before actually writing these API requests into a program or to a script or something. But you're going to need, of course, credentials. Your credentials are key to accessing the proxied endpoints that Infor provides. So how do you do that? Well, you're going to go back in, like I showed you before. You're going to go into your authorized app. You're going to create a new authorized app, and you're going to get that ION API file that I showed you. So you're going to create that backend service to get those credentials. Now, once you have those credentials, everything in that file is what you need to make this request. So I'll show you here quickly. Basically, all of these keys have values to them. And in order to be able to build your request properly, you're going to put some of these together and you're going to use other ones as your, your client secret, your client password, in order to get your access token to be able to make your API request to your endpoint. So these are the things that you do require to make a successful request. So again, credentials, we're going to have to get our credentials. We can use a service account. We can use our own personal user account. Then we're going to create a backend service. We're going to download that. And then we're going to get our access token URL. So like I said, we take some of the keys and we put them together. So we see this PU key and this OT key. That's what forms our auth URL so that we can request our token. Once we have our access token, again, we can make our request. So just an example, I wanted to show you in Postman of how this kind of works. And then, I'm going to move on to a script. I'll show you a script that I've written, which again, I've posted on our GitHub for you if you want to download that script. It's just a simple Python script that you can use for your own needs, for testing, to do whatever you want. Just to test externally to make sure you can communicate with your APIs and then maybe build from there. But if we go into our Postman, this is how we can make a request through Postman. So basically everything you see here, this is all the information from our ION API file. This is our token that we receive after we enter the information here. We're going to give it a name. So we're going to, use the grant type password credentials. We're going to use that token URL that we saw earlier. Remember, the token URL is the PU and the OT keys key values put together. That forms your token, your access token URL. And then we see we have the different client secret and username and password. Once we have this all entered into our Postman, we can get a new access token. So we're going to click on that, authentication complete. We're going to proceed and we're going to use this token. Just like we saw in the Swagger tool, we had that big long string. That's our access token. So now when we have that token, we can come in here. Well, how am I going to send this request? I'm not sure. That's where our ION API comes in, or sorry, not our ION API, our Swagger tool comes into play. How am I going to format my payload or my request? Well, we can come in here and we can see, oh, this is the information I need to put into my request. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put that into the body of my request. And as we see here, here's the endpoint URL that we get after we make our request. It's right here. So we can just copy that and we put that into our Postman request. We're going to use the post method in this case because that's what it's expecting. And then we can go ahead and we can send our request. And I'm unauthorized. Oops. And I'm sorry, I'm going to use my new token. And then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to, there. So we have to make sure that we're authenticated. We're using the proper access token, the proper information. We're going to send that off. We get a successful response. So now we're making an API request, but we're not in Infor OS. We're outside of Infor OS. So we know we can access, we know we can communicate to our tenant successfully to make that request. That's great. That's, again, a tool for testing, just to make sure that we can access these endpoints and we can get the data back that we're expecting. So how else are we going to get our data? Typically, we're going to work with third parties. We're going to have, storefront websites, things like that need to communicate using these APIs to send data. Maybe we want to create an order in CSD, or maybe we want to access some data from Fetchware and use that data to make another API call. Typically, this would be done, through programming or through scripting. but you can access data from APIs to do many things. You can access data from IDM. You can get your IDM PDF documents or invoices or acknowledgements or things like that. You can use APIs to do that externally from your system. So how can we do that? I just showed you everything in Postman. So again, we can do it programmatically. Now, you're not limited. I have an example, and I'm going to show you a Python example, but you're not limited to Python. Of course, you know, if you are more familiar with JavaScript or Java, even Microsoft PowerShell, you can use that to make an API request to get data from your system. So what I wanted to show you is here on our GitHub, we also have this example. It's a Python script that you can download. You can go ahead here, you can go into your code, you can download this. I put a little README in there, how to set this up and make it work. But basically, you would go into this file once you download it and you would just enter information. So I've gone step by step to show you what you would need to do. And this could come in very handy, I think, for you to be able to learn from, at least. It's a very simple example of how to make an API request, but basically step one, you're gonna put your token URL in here. Basically, you're gonna replace it with your tenant. You're gonna replace your endpoint with your tenant's name. So in my case, it's NSA_com_dem. For your tenant, it could be, you know, customer ABC_train or _test or prod. And then you're going to edit your payload for your company. You could be trying to access data from company 1. You could be trying to access data from company 1000. So you're going to replace your company number with your Kono. Operator is your operator, could be sys. Table name that you want to query. So again, this is just a simple fetch-where query. And then you're going to take that ION API file that we worked on downloading before, and you're going to replace the SAK user, the SASK user, the client ID, and the client secret. And that's all you're going to do. You're going to save that. And then if you're running a Windows system, you can download Python if you don't already have it. If you run a Mac, you probably already have Python. If you're running Linux, Python should already be there. So you should be able to just run that in those systems. And I'll give you an example of how this works, and I'll show you the steps it takes to get the information. So we are going to use this. Where's my file? All right, so I'm just going to show you my edited file. And basically, as you can see, this is my endpoint URL. This is my token URL, my auth URL. This is my endpoint URL. This is my payload. I put all my keys and everything in there, and I'm ready to make this request. So I'm going to open a terminal, and I'm going to show you that because I have Python installed already, I can simply just run Python and then the name of the script. And so I'm going to run that, and as you can see, the first step, hopefully I can scroll up there. So the first step is that it goes out to that auth token and it asks for, with all the credentials we put in there, it asks for an auth token or a bearer token that we can use to make our call. Without that, we're not going to be able to make our call to get this information. So it used that, it came back with all the printer information. So now you might be saying, well, that's nice, but what am I going to do with all this stuff in the console? Well, you know, you can obviously take this script after you download it and do whatever you want with it. You can enhance it. It's for you to use, but maybe you'd want to just write it to a file. So maybe, well, why don't we just do something like this? Why don't we do with open API response.json, and we'll write this out, and we'll do it as f here. And then what we'll do is we'll do f.write And what we want to do is we want to write out the API call response, which is the response that we receive back from the API request that we send. And we're going to want to write out the content. So we'll save that, and then I'll run this again. There's our token, there's our response. And now I've received the same response in a file. So again, you can use any kind of editor that you want. This looks pretty messy. I like to use Notepad++ because I can just install my little plugins and I can go ahead and format my JSON. And so here we have a file with the response that we were looking for. So this is a list of all the printers, all the properties of the printers that we have. Now we can do what we want with this data that we have. We can take this data, we can parse it out, we can pull out certain key values. We can do whatever we want. Maybe we want to add it to an Excel sheet, or we want to put it in a table in a web page, or we want to put it in a database. We can absolutely do that. And so that's just to show you how easy it is to be able to do an API call. Things you need your credentials, you need your endpoints, and Swagger's your friend. So that is APIs. Are there any questions up until now?
Yeah, folks, please remember to enter any questions into the chat box and we'll make sure that we get to them and address them. I don't see any yet, Rob.
Okay. All right. So that's APIs. So this is something else that I think is pretty handy. I like scripting. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think it's a powerful feature in ION Desk. And Infor provides you with the ability to add scripts into your data flows, workflows, and your processes, and it allows you to be able to, manipulate the data and do things with the data. That's pretty cool, in fact. And it's a very powerful part, I think, of the ION stack. So scripting can be used in data flows, like I said. It can be used to enhance your data. Again, it can be used to transform. It can be used to format your data objects. And I'll show you some examples, actually. It can be used for data mapping. You have XSLT, but you can also even use a script to format or to map your data. And if you needed to, you can certainly do complex calculations with scripts if you had to, based on the data that's coming from CSD or that you're trying to pull from other applications or send to other applications. So here is a very basic example. Some may have seen this before. I did show this in another webinar that I did, but I still think it's important to show because I think it should give some ideas to people who are really looking to understand how they can use and leverage the technologies. And basically, this is a data flow that allows you to send data from CSD, convert that data into a JSON request, in fact, and send it off to an IDM API endpoint, which then takes the response from that and creates another request to send an email. So what it does is the idea behind it is that it's going to, whoever creates a purchase order, for example, it's going to take that purchase order, it's going to send the data off as XML, it's going to be picked up by this this connection point here, which is a script that's going to manipulate that data, and it's going to turn it into an API request so that it sends the actual CSV data to IDM and adds it as a CSV document in IDM. And then from there, it's going to turn back and it's going to say, well, thanks for your response. I'm going to massage this response and I'm going to take the data out of the response that I need, and I'm going to send that CSV over in an email to the user who created the purchase order. So basically it does two things. It adds, well, three things. It converts data to a CSV file, it adds it to IDM, and then it sends it off in an email as an attachment. So basically, we start with the script. The script just goes ahead and it reads through the XML data, very basic script. So it goes through the XML data. You see here we add some headers to the information, and then we say, well, we want the values from all the values from purchase order line, and then we want some static values from other elements in the BOD, and we're going to use that data to form our CSV file. So once we have that data and we've pulled out the data values that we need, we've created our CSV file, we're actually going to encode that file into base64 format so that we can, and we're also going to build an API request so that we're going to send that as a document through to our API. And that's going to create a document. It's going to create the CSV file in IDM. And then once we receive the response from our API endpoint, we take that response and we massage it a little bit. And the nice part about these API endpoints is you can actually map the response and create a new request, for example, to be sent off in a triggered API. So it's really neat the way that Infor's done this, and it's pretty valuable to be able to use this technology. So we're going to take this request and we're going to send it off, and we're going to end up getting an email from the system. And so I thought I'd show you an example of that. In our ION API, in our CSD, pardon me. I'm going to create a purchase order. I'm going to add my vendor, and I'm going to click next. And I'll choose a product that has stock. All right, I can choose this one. And I'll go ahead and I'll finish that. So one nice thing about this technology also in ION Desk is that we have the ability to see what's going on. So we're creating a purchase order, we can see what's happening through that whole process. So here you see we've created purchase order 315. If we wanted to, we can look, we can see where it went, what happened. Something happened, and we can take a look at the data that's sent. This is the BOD that it created. If we were to dig right down into it, we could see the line item that we added and everything. And we can see, where in the process it has gone. And it looks like something went wrong, but I don't know. It's always the way. So we see that we sent our request to IDM. We also see that this is our response that we got back, and this is the email request that we're going to send in order to send the email off to the user. Now, if I can open my Outlook here. Well, this is a bit of a glitch. Unfortunately, my Outlook is not opening. But I should have received an email attachment. All right, so sure enough. All right, so we can see here that I now have purchase order 315 that came over in my email. And if I wanted to look at that in IDM, I can come into IDM. And you can see now that's the most recently modified document. This came over as order number 315. I can open this up. And there we have it. So vendor name, Robert Thayer, invoice number 315, invoice date, cetera, et cetera. So that's just to show you how you can use this technology to manipulate the data that you're sending, to do different things, to store documents in IDM, send emails, and really the sky is the limit with all of the different things that you can possibly do with APIs and with the data lake data that you're accessing. You can actually pull data from data lake and use the data in an API. You can use the data that you extract from data lake through a data flow. And again, you can put it in a folder location, or you can just pull some information out of the object that's sent and send that in an API and store the response somewhere else. So it's really just working with the data, working with the tools that you're provided with, and it allows you to do many different things. You can connect to, you can connect to third parties. Third parties can connect to your tenant to pull data, to add data using APIs. And so that's really what you can do with this technology. I mean, those are just some of the things that you can do with this technology that Infor provides. That's pretty much what I have to show. But I wanted to be sure. Oh, there's one other thing I guess I wanted to mention. If you are using scripts in a data flow, some of the things you're going to need to know is that the execution time of a script is 15 seconds. If it exceeds 15 seconds, then your script is going to fail, so you're going to get an error. Input and output payload is 5 meg, and the memory limit that you're capped at is 1,000 megabytes. And of course, external access to external endpoints. For example, you couldn't connect to an endpoint in Amazon, for example, running a script. But what you can do is you can do what I showed you. You can create a request and then call an endpoint using a data flow, for example. So really, the sky is the limit when it comes to the tools that Infor provides. And I hope that this was good information. I hope that it gets the wheels turning and gives you some ideas for ways that you can use the technology going forward in your tenant and in your journey to the cloud. So these links I sent in the chat. If you're interested, you can go ahead and access the information that I provided up in our GitHub repository. You can download the examples. There's documentation on how to set things up like dbeaver. I showed you there's a script up there so that you can access data using the JDBC driver using a Python script. And also there's the API request that you can use using Python. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate
Rob,
your
thank
time.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. We do have a couple of questions. So one is there a good resource on Infor's website to look for additional APIs that are available?
Well, unfortunately, Infor is not very forthcoming with its information. Anytime we've had to access information about APIs, we've often had to go through like Ron Stevens, and even at that, it's not easy to get. You can email me on the side if you'd like. I do have some documentation. It's a bit dated, but it does describe the APIs and the requirements to make those requests. So if you'd like, you can ping me on the side and I'll send you some documentation that I have.
Excellent. So I guess while we're waiting for more questions, and by the way, folks, we have another 9 minutes. If anyone does want to ask any questions, please enter them in the chat. Rob, there's a lot of capabilities, but that also adds some complexity. If somebody is either looking for assistance, with the APIs with ION, or knows the need but may not have the resources internally to go ahead and make it work, what can NSA do to assist in those situations?
Well, absolutely. I mean, reach out to support at nsa.com, and we have a team of very brilliant consultants. We can sit down with you. We can review your requirements. We can certainly work with you. We can either assist, or we can actually take a project for you if you wanted to. Anything that you are looking for as far as help, and NSA is certainly here to help along the way. We can even provide some ideas of things that, could possibly be implemented to make things smoother, for you. So.
Great. And then one other thing I'll ask, Rob, if you don't mind, just resending those links in the chat. Some people are having difficulty seeing them. I happen to see them, but maybe that's because I'm the organizer.
Sure.
I know you sent them to everyone, but if you could just go ahead and resend those in the chat real quick once again, it'll give folks a few moments to be able to access that.
Sure thing. Sure. All right, so this one is a script that uses the JDBC driver that you can use to pull data from your data lake. And this one is just a link to the repository that that gives instructions on how to set up dbeaver. And the final one is the Python script that allows you to authenticate and get a token and make an API request using your ION API credentials. So those three, hopefully everybody has access to that. Is everybody seeing that in the chat, the links?
Excellent, Rob. Yeah, I've already got a comment saying thank you. So I think that those that are attending are able to see that.
Okay,
Excellent.
perfect.
So we'll leave that up there for another minute or so and invite any final questions for Rob. We're almost at the top of the hour. We've got another 6 minutes here, just in case anybody has any final questions they'd like to ask. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank Rob for his excellent presentation here on ION. I hope this was helpful for everybody. Keep in mind, you will be getting a copy of the recording of today's session. That'll go out within the next 24 to 48 hours to folks. And I'd like to thank you guys for attending. There is one more question, Rob. How to add a table to DataLake that exists in CSD but not in DataLake?
Well, you can add that table using the SAAAU audit. Basically, you're going to add that table and select the audit flag. Not all tables are supported in DataLake. Can the links included? So unfortunately, you can't put all tables. You may have some custom tables, and unfortunately, you can add them to DataLake, but you may have problems with those tables and trying to access data from them once they are in DataLake. So this is a thing that Infor is working on. They are constantly adding new capabilities to DataLake, new tables, but unfortunately not all tables are supported.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for that answer. There is a request that when we do send the recording to include the links. So yes, we'll absolutely do that. Rob, when you get a chance, if you can email those to me, and I'll make sure that when we have the recording go out, we'll attach those as well. So I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's session. And if we can be of any assistance to you guys in this regard in ION, please reach out and let us know. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.